welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John Irola with you guys. We've got an amazing show for you guys today, filled to the rim with liars, as John was just talking about off air. We'll get to those. I think you're mainly talking about Paul Ryan, but I actually want to.
No, everywhere.
All of them, right? I know.
Everybody. I'll save it. I'll save it.
Okay. I'm mainly talking about Susan Collins. Susan Collins, who's going to kvetch, I'm trying not to use the word cry, about how there's sexism against her, because God forbid a Republican woman should ever be criticized. All of a sudden they realize there's sexism in the world the minute they get any kind of criticism. So anyway.
There is, I just don't think this is a good example.
Yes.
But there is.
We'll talk about that. Talk about how Trump is trying to bully the whole world. Are they going to give in or are they going to fight back? That'll be interesting. Then Rosie O'Donnell and Ben Shapiro in a fascinating fight where obscenities were used. In fact, one of them told the other to suck their dick. Now, which one? Well, you'll find out in the second hour.
I'm glad that person did, but I wish that they hadn't, because then the other person, I'm trying to be vague, wouldn't be in the news again.
Okay, you gave it away completely. Okay, this is the most obvious thing.
I don't want to hear about Rosie.
Okay,
does that obscure it enough?
No, not really.
Oh,
okay,
sorry.
So, but here's my favorite thing in the world, and is that the throwaway little fun segment I did yesterday about the bet I had with Jimmy Dore. Okay, we did a poll on him if he should pay me the $1,000 or $500, or if I should let him go. Okay. There's 27,000 votes on it.
What do our polls normally get? Is that more than normal?
Oh, that's like 10x, 5x, at a minimum 5x of what a normal poll is.
Should we push for single payer health care? Would that have less votes?
That would have way less votes. That's way less.
That's disconcerting, but what are the results?
The results are so neck and neck that it makes it the second layer of interesting.
Okay.
I'll confess what I voted for. I voted for $500 to kind of let him off the hook a little bit because he said 5 to 1 at the end, and I can't get enough of that picture. It's tytnetwork.com/thebet. How much should Cenk make Jimmy pay him for our bet in October of 2015, where I said Trump would win the general election, and it was 10 to 1, and we bet $100. So theoretically, he owes me $1,000. So let him go is at 45.8%. $1,000 is at 47.4%.
So the two extremes are the highest.
Basically 47 to 46.
47 to 46. Okay.
Yeah.
So and the last one, a couple percentage points is.
500 is only 7%. Okay.
Okay. So you're not the voice of the people here, then.
No,
so people either want the whole thing or let him go.
Yes.
Is there still time to vote? Can people go and vote?
Oh yeah. Are you kidding me? Let's keep having fun.
This is apparently the most important thing that's ever happened. So go vote, people, while there's still time.
And some people are kind of bah humbug about it. Is there more important stories? Of course, there's more important stories. We cover
maybe not. I don't know.
We cover more stories in 2 hours than CNN does in 2 weeks. But anyway, if you'd like to vote on this fun topic, not a big deal.
I agree, it's fun. I'm joking.
tytnetwork.com/thebet. Okay.
My favorite thing about it is that everybody, I don't so much, but you and Ben make bets and JR constantly. You guys never remember them, basically.
Yeah, until somebody in the audience reminds us.
Okay, so go looking for our bets.
Okay, all right, so John, let's get started.
Okay, today the House gave final approval to the GOP tax bill, effectively clearing the way for Donald Trump to sign it. And we will now have, in law, the largest government redistribution of wealth in my entire lifetime, possibly going back long before I was born. The Republicans, both in the House and the Senate, are positively giddy about it. And they're not going to let a little thing like the truth of what's actually in the bill get in the way of their celebrations. You're going to see that in the videos we're going to show you shortly. We've got Paul Ryan, we've got Trump himself, we've got Ted Cruz, all just spreading a bunch of BS about what's in the bill and what's likely to happen from the bill. But before we go to that, Cenk, did you think it would happen? Yeah, clearly we thought it would happen, but it happened.
So
$1.5 trillion from you and me and our audience to corporations and the wealthiest people in the country.
Yeah. So a couple of things here. Number one, the media played this as they usually do, this false drama of is it gonna happen or is it not gonna happen? We told you on the Young Turks from day one, it was definitely 100% going to happen. And we'll get into why in a second. And the fundamental misunderstanding people have about politics, not you guys, but the people in power. Secondarily, a lot of the right wing were like, oh no, oh my God, it's never gonna happen. Oh my God, it's such a important thing that it just might not pass because of the evil Democrats or whatever the hell they thought. In fact, a guy who's in the news today, before we did our infamous debate, Ben Shapiro and I were talking about the tax cut bill backstage, and he said, "Oh, it'll never pass." And I'm like, "What are you?" But he was adamant, and
he's anti-Trump, right?
Yeah, he's anti-Trump, but obviously very, very right wing.
Well, some of them thought that Trump because Trump is such a weirdo that him and the Republicans wouldn't be able to work together.
No, but okay, so
on tax cuts, tax cuts, they're not going to be able to work together.
Yeah. So that leads to the most important part of this story, okay, is for all the mainstream media, the right wingers, whoever, all these other people, get it through your thick skulls. There is a small group of people in this country who rule us all. They are called the donors. The donors to the politicians make almost all of the policy. So the reason why I am so often right on the show is not because I'm really smart, really astute, and I'm sure that my critics would agree, okay, it's because it's a really simple process. It's not like, oh, what does the honorable gentleman from Tennessee, Bob Corker, is he pro-Trump, anti-Trump? Does he care about the deficit? Does he not care about the deficit? No. Follow the goddamn money, okay? It's the oldest thing in the world. So their donors all want giant tax cuts. In fact, even if they had lost Corker and Collins, which they were never ever going to lose, we said that from day one and we were 1,000% right, it wouldn't have mattered. You know why? Because Feinstein would have stepped up, or Manchin would have stepped up, and a couple of Democrats would have flipped, because their donors also want the trillions of dollars in tax cuts. Dianne Feinstein voted for Bush's tax cuts. She voted to repeal the estate tax before. The only reason she didn't vote for it this time is because they had enough Republican votes. It was an absolute guarantee the donor class wanted it, and it was their #1 priority. And look, it's not a thing that they hide. The reason we know it is because it was all over the press. They told Politico, they told every paper they could. Even a Democratic donor went on MSNBC and publicly threatened the Democrats and said, you better not get in our way. And all of the Republican donors said, if they don't give us our goddamn tax cuts, then what the hell did we bribe them for? They didn't use the word bribe, but almost. They said, we're gonna withdraw all of our money from these politicians unless they give us a return on investments. This country, unfortunately, I love America, but it has become one of the most corrupt countries on earth. And the reason is, unlike all the other countries that have plenty of corruption, we legalized corruption. We legalized bribery. So this was a foregone conclusion, and anyone who didn't see that coming doesn't understand anything about American politics.
I was told not to worry about it during the election. That fundamentally, he's too incompetent, it wouldn't happen. I mean, of the things that I was most worried about, he hasn't yet defaulted on our debt, so that's good. But they got the tax cuts, they've pulled us out of the Paris Accords. I'll have to remember the other one, I've had a Rick Perry moment, but they're doing very well on it. And so, I mean, it's incredibly disheartening. I tweeted about it last night, like, that they were able to do. Like if I came to you with original reporting from TYT Investigates and we had a source that showed that the Republicans had stolen $1.5 million from regular Americans and given it to a corporation, it would be a scandal, most people wouldn't believe us. If we said $1 billion, we would be conspiracy theorists. But with $1 trillion, it's totally fine. It's a win for them, a win for the GOP. And so that's awesome.
And it's not, and that's another thing that drives me crazy. It's not $1.5 trillion. It's $1.5 trillion that they couldn't cover. The rest of it is in tax increases to the middle class and is in massive cuts that they're going to make to spending. And then
and also after 10 years, it's going to be even far worse. Not just the debt servicing, but the growth is not going to match what the fairy tale idea that the Republicans gave you with what the growth would be like.
And you're still going to have a $1.5 trillion deficit on top of that.
Yeah.
And from now on, we can retire it forever. In the old days, they had collective amnesia because honestly, reporters just were so craven in their attempt to cover for the Republican Party by calling everything neutral, okay? So from now on, any reporter that earnestly reports that the Republicans care about deficits should be immediately fired. Because it's just not true. They're purposely stating Republican propaganda that has been proven incorrect right now without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, and how many times do we need to go through this? Like I wasn't a conscious political person under Reagan, but Reagan came in, they had massive tax cuts. George W. Bush comes in, they have massive tax cuts. Trump comes in, they have massive tax cuts. We don't need to speculate about what they're gonna do. And if you think for a second that they're gonna be satisfied with 21% for the corporate tax or 37% for the top marginal tax rate, that's what they were able to get now. And when I tweeted about it, I got many Republicans whose only response, their only thought about this wasn't even happiness, it wasn't even glee. It was taxation is theft.
Yeah.
They're not done, okay? If they remain in power, there will be more of this.
80% of the cuts went to the top 1%. It is not a mystery as to who our corrupt politicians serve. They serve the top 1% because they're financed by the top 1%. It's not remotely complicated. And anyone who thinks that it is just doesn't belong in media that covers politics because they don't understand politics at all. They should go get another job.
I agree. Okay, well, let's turn to the lies about this bill. And I'm going to preface this by saying there was a point where we thought with the rise of the internet and social media that things are recorded and stored and you can search for them, that you can catch someone in a lie. And these videos are gonna prove that it doesn't matter if you catch them in a lie, the video doesn't actually matter. But here is Paul Ryan. So we've been talking about how much this is going to cost. Okay, there have been estimates. Let's see if Paul Ryan respects those estimates.
It is estimated this tax cut is going to cost $1.46 trillion more to the deficit. Now, I know that the theory is that if you have more tax growth, you get more revenues into the coffer, and that reduces the deficit. But let me just put a fine point on it. Are you saying that the growth you're going to get from this tax cut will equal the amount it would cost on the deficit side, so that it's a wash, so that you're not adding to the deficit at all because of this?
Nobody knows the answer to that question because that's in the future. But what we do know is that this will increase economic growth.
Yeah, well, like if Paul Ryan was standing in front of me and I cock back my fist and throw it forward, who can say what'll happen? It's in the future. We don't know. No, they do know. They did estimates. Now, they could be off, we don't know for sure, but it's not going to pay for it. And to lie to the audience there and allow him to lie and say that we don't know is insane.
No, but it's actually slightly worse than that because in the beginning, Paul Ryan, before this legislation was introduced, said it was gonna be deficit neutral. That's a quote. And he said it over and over and over again. And he pretended to care about deficits. Now, it is, again, beyond a shadow of a doubt that Paul Ryan is a liar and never cared about deficits. All that talk about, oh my God, Obama added to the deficit. Wait a minute. George W. Bush, because of his giant tax cuts for the rich, handed Obama a $1.2 trillion deficit to begin with. Obama knocked it down to half of that in 8 years. You could say he could have done more to knock down Bush's deficit, but you never cared about the deficit. Republicans didn't then, they certainly don't do now. And then now they added a $1.5 trillion on top. So obviously their complaint about Obama was total political lie after lie after lie. Now, in the case of Paul Ryan, now he's turning around and saying, and I'm sorry, during the campaign to get the bill passed, he was like, oh my God, but it's gonna lead to so much growth. I wouldn't worry about that $1.5 trillion deficit. Yeah, it's clearly creating, but don't worry about it because the growth and then, and everything will be fine. Now that it's passed, he's like, well, just kidding, it won't be fine. But no one can know what's gonna happen. Yeah. Wait, I thought you were the math whiz for the Republicans. I thought you were the budget guy and that you were the one with all the pie charts and you were the one smart Republican. And now all of a sudden, hey, what do the numbers indicate will happen? Besides which, we're all rich. It's already too late. We passed the bill, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, you know what's gonna happen? It's gonna explode on top of your head. What do I care? I already got rich.
So when I was in so-called academia, I was a political scientist, not a historian. but I would guess that this is going to explode just in time for a Democratic president to have to fix it. Yeah. If I had to guess, that's what I would say.
And I'll tell you what, if you got a real progressive president, not one of these stupid Democratic establishment guys who have the same donors, yes, they should be absolutely, positively unabashed. The minute they walk into office, they should undo all of these cuts. Every one of them, not like, oh, but now it's too late, or now, no. The minute they get in, they give everything to the rich. We worried about wealth and income inequality? Well, all right, great. The minute we come in, we're gonna restore things for the middle class and not for the rich.
And that's a good first step.
Yes.
I mean, the taxes before this, the tax system we had before they just passed this last night was not acceptable. It was increasing income inequality on a yearly basis. This is just going to pour gasoline on it. But we needed progress, okay? This is purposefully regressing.
Yeah, no more Obamas. No more, they take 100 yards, we take 5 yards back. No, they take 100 yards, we're gonna take 200 yards. It's the Chicago way. Ironically, it's not because Obama's from Chicago. Apparently the Chicago way.
Let's go a different way. I don't know, like, well, how's Philly? I don't know.
Apparently the Chicago way is take 5% back of what they got.
Yeah.
Maybe we could call it the Vermont way.
Maybe, the Birmingham way. That's Vermont, right? Yeah, it is. Okay, let's go through some more videos. Let's try to keep it a little bit quicker because there's a few of these we want to get to. So we've got Paul Ryan. Let's see, what are these companies going to do with the hundreds of billions of dollars we're going to shower on them? Let's find out.
As I understand your argument and that of your colleagues, you're counting on corporations to take that money they now have and plow it right back into the economy, hire people, raise wages. It doesn't work if they don't do that. Is that correct?
No, all the studies show us that is exactly what does happen. But first of all, Savannah, don't forget that we tax American corporations at the highest rate in the industrialized world. So we are convinced, and the studies are really clear, workers benefit, wages go up, more jobs occur. The vast majority of businesses are going to do just what we say, reinvest in their workers, reinvest in their factories, pay people more money, higher wages.
Let me pin you down on that, though.
The data is really clear, by the way. Workers benefit from this through higher wages. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how much they benefit.
So what?
Everything you said was a lie.
We don't tax them at the highest rate. It's effectively a very low rate. So when the Democrats tried to add an amendment saying that if, I forget what the time frame was, if wages do not go up, if this does not result in higher wages, then we rescind it. They voted that down. Why? If you're so sure that that's what's going to happen, why not add that in? You might get a couple of Democratic votes on your side after you do that because they know it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. TYT Investigates has done extensive reporting over the past few months on what happened specifically with the tax holiday the last time they did this under George W. Bush. It did not result in more jobs. Many of those companies went on to fire thousands of workers.
And not only 2004, but TYT Investigates looked into specific companies who either had their CEO or their lobbyists go out and say, oh yeah, lower taxes is going to lead in, they weren't even outrageous enough to say higher wages because they knew that was never gonna happen, right? But to say, they said more jobs. So then we went and investigated FedEx, UPS, Apple, Lockheed Martin, and some of which claimed, oh, we're adding the factories that Paul Ryan just referred to there. Not only did we find out that they were actually telling their shareholders at the shareholder meetings, no, we're not gonna do that. In fact, we're gonna start outsourcing and automating more. So shareholders, boy, we got great news for you. First of all, we're gonna get you tons of tax cuts, which we're then gonna have funnel a lot of it to you and a lot of us to executives, right? Secondly, we're gonna cut even more jobs and save even more money, and good news for you. Because when they talk to shareholders, they're not on TV where they can lie.
Yeah.
They have to be honest with their shareholders or otherwise they'll be in legal trouble.
Yeah.
And with their shareholders, they're jubilant about it anyway. They don't have to hide anything. They're like, yes! So, and then in one of the stories, and you should go read all of this at TYT Investigates. So Apple claimed that they were gonna start a new factory. And we went to try to figure out if in that area, the subsidiary they were working with had done any permits. If they had gone to the government and said, we'd like to expand our factory or do a new factory. And we found no. And they had to admit, no, there are no new factories.
Yeah.
There will be no new jobs. That was all a marketing gimmick. But Ryan still goes and does that because he's a professional liar. And he was purchased by those donors to go and tell these pretty little lies about how your wages are gonna go up. And I'll tell you this ahead of time, I'll make any bet, any size, okay? Paul Ryan, here, take me up on it, 10 to 1, 100 to 1, wages are not gonna go up. So you want them to do it at 2018, 2019, 2020? I'll take any year. They're not gonna go up. We can study the top 500 companies, the top 1,000 companies, and if they took the tax cuts and actually grew wages, great, then I'll admit I was wrong, and whatever size bet you wanna make, I'm happy to do that, right? But that's not what they're saying to their shareholders. They're saying we're not gonna do that at all. We're just gonna keep the money, which if you're a regular person, you know they're gonna do that. You think out of the goodness of their heart, they're gonna give you higher wages? There's no law that says give higher wages. It just says here, take the money and do whatever you want with it.
They're literally sitting on trillions of dollars already. How big does a pile of money need to be before you start to just on your own? Just because it would be awesome to raise wages, would you do it? That's not how they function. We don't need to think ahead to the future. It's already the way they function.
And one more thing about that clip, he said every study shows this. That's completely the reverse. Every study shows that no, growth does not make up for the $1.5 trillion deficit. No, it does not lead to more jobs. The only study that he's got on his side is the National Association of Manufacturers. In other words, the guys who wanted the tax cuts in the first place, his own donors did a study where they said, give us the money and we promise we'll spread it around later.
And do you remember, I mean, you might remember a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we showed you, I think it was the budget director for Trump had a bunch of CEOs in a big audience, and he asked them, how many of you are planning on investing this new money that you'll have back into your companies? And a pathetic number of hands were raised. And he asked them that, why aren't you raising your hands? And they said, because they don't need to. If they needed to hire, they would hire. They would use the money they have currently. It's not going to happen. And by the way, I heard today, Donald Trump said AT&T is announcing that they're going to give $1,000 bonuses to like 100,000 employees because of this bill, which that sounds great. That sounds like exactly what they should do. And they also announced it 6 weeks ago. Before this bill, we even had anything like the final draft of the bill. They're just lying and now saying to curry favor with Trump because they know he wants to be able to take credit for something. They're saying it again today as if it has anything to do with the tax bill. And they get away with it because there's no truth left in the world anymore. Everyone is a goddamn liar. It's true, it's true. We are very bad at identifying and cataloging lies on the other side, and especially if it's on our own. If you're a Republican and you're listening to Paul Ryan there, it feels good to believe that corporations were already taxed at the highest rate and now things are gonna be more just. It feels good to imagine that you will get a tax cut, even though you can look at the charts and see that in 10 years you're gonna be far worse off. It feels good so we don't question it. That's who we are as a species.
Well, John, I know it's easy to be despondent on a day like today, but also remember that this is a deeply unpopular bill. It's polling at 33% and dropping. So they're just playing patty cakes with themselves on TV. So I'm surprised that the press is even pressing them at all on it. And they are a little bit. Right now, I'm now seeing even Aaron Burnett saying like, wait, deficits don't matter? You guys came on this program for 10 years straight and told me that deficits are the most important thing. So, and now, Savannah Guthrie and stuff. So a little bit, but overall they're gonna play patty cakes and it's done, And they don't give a damn what you think. If they cared about what you thought, we'd live in a democracy.
Okay, I wanna show you one more video. I know that we're going over on this first block, but take a look at Ted Cruz and his excitement upon passing the bill and who he is willing to attack even in his moment of triumph.
The irony of all the high dudgeon from our Democratic friends pounding the table about this is a tax cut for the rich. The only people whose taxes are going up are the really rich. The middle class, their taxes are all going down. The working class, their taxes are going down. Every taxpayer, their taxes are going down except rich people in Manhattan and San Francisco. Some of them, their taxes may go up. And you see this kabuki theater of senators on the Democratic aisle pretending we must defend the rich people by claiming we're defending the working class. Well, Mr. President, the facts are the facts are the facts, and the facts are the taxes for the working class are going down.
Not a single word of that is true.
Yeah, of all the liars in Congress, Ted Cruz is the worst and the most abhorrent. he oozes grease as he says one lie after another. So, number one, about a third of the middle class is getting an immediate tax increase. Number two, within 10 years, everyone making under $75,000 would get a tax increase. Number three, 80% of the tax cuts are going to the top 1%. Number four, the guys in New York that he's referring to, actually a lot of them work in finance. And Trump said that he would get rid of their loopholes. He didn't. He kept the loopholes. On top of that, they added loopholes to corporations. They said they were going to take away all the loopholes for corporations. Not only did they not do that, they added loopholes. Yeah. So at the end of the day, actually the really rich in New York and San Francisco, they probably, some of them, because half of them are liberals, might not like Ted Cruz, but right now they're laughing going, hey Ted, I got bad news for you. We're getting wonderful, wonderful tax cuts. But of course Ted Cruz knows that.
They won't do as well as the rich in some other places because of course if they're paying higher state taxes, the cap on deductions for state and local taxes mean that they won't be able to benefit as much, certainly. But I mean, they literally took the top tax bracket and took it down to 37%. They lowered it. And that same day, he goes on TV and says the only people paying more taxes are the wealthy. And that video, he'll run for president again. If Trump doesn't, if he's like got something else to do, he's in jail or something, Ted Cruz is going to run for president. And that clear lie, it's literally disproven by the words written in the bill, will mean nothing.
Yeah, not let alone the pass-through tax, which most rich people will use and actually pay in the 20s, not anywhere near 37%.
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of new corporations coming up in the next few years. They're gonna have one employee each. There's gonna be a lot of new corporations.
Yeah, let alone the state tax cut, doubling of the exemption, let alone the corporate tax cut, which then helps rich people. I mean, let alone the real estate loophole. All these things, all designed for their owners. And one last thing about Ted Cruz, and so some of the Republicans and some of the corrupt Democrats are knuckleheads, and they get themselves to actually believe it. And Paul Ryan is given credit for being smart. No, I really think he's one of the dumber guys there is. And like that press conference about healthcare really proved it, where he just doesn't even understand the concept of health insurance. He's like, and then the healthy pay for the poor. What a crazy system. Yeah, that's insurance. That's insurance, you idiot, right? But Cruz actually is relatively intelligent. That's what makes him more smarmy and a worse guy. He knows the depths of his lies. So here's the point I want to make about that. Ted Cruz's #1 donor during the last presidential run was Robert Mercer. Mercer had given him $13 million. You know who Robert Mercer is? He is a hedge fund guy out of New York City. And Mercer gave all that money to Ted Cruz and then later to Donald Trump. Why? He wants giant tax cuts, which might save him literally billions of dollars.
Yeah, we broke that down a couple weeks ago.
And so that's Ted Cruz's #1 donor. He knows who his #1 donor is. So, and he knows that he works in New York, or at least in the tri-state area, right? And he knows that he just gave him billions of dollars that he's going to redistribute from the middle class to his donor, Robert Mercer. So, but he comes up there and does this smarmy speech about, as if he's like Mr. Regular Guy from Texas. And he's like, oh, we're going to get the rich people in New York and San Francisco. And then he goes backstage and laughs and probably hugs it out with Robert Mercer saying, yes, once again, we screwed over the American people on behalf of our donors. That's who that sad, sleazy Ted Cruz is. The only thing that makes me happy about Ted Cruz, whenever I see him now, I always think of the picture of him phone banking for Trump like a broken man, like a pathetic beta cuck that he is.
Wow. If you want to feel even a little bit better, for some reason, I guess it's just for publicity, on about a monthly basis, he goes on CNN and debates Bernie Sanders and just gets slapped around every time. But he keeps coming back for more. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, he fancies himself a debate champion. That's what's hilarious about it. Okay.
We got to go to our first break.
Yes,
I imagine we're way over.
And we've got a lot more rage coming at you guys when we come back. Here at TYT headquarters, we are building independent media. We're literally building it. It's not done yet. I've got a great offer for you guys. 3 months of membership for just $25. You can gift it to friends and family. This is a good time to gift things, as you can tell, because I'm wearing a Santa hat. Help us build independent media and hold the establishment accountable with just $25. This is not $25. It's a lovely JFK gold coin, which I will now eat. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like, physically?
Yeah. Okay. What? You don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to like do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. I don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like, you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost never.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you. Abel says, let's be real, Democrats are not crying over this tax bill. Some are doing a good job of fighting back. They're the regular cast of characters. Most of the others are like, oh no, golly gee, there was nothing we could do again. Yet again, the Republicans won. They twisted our arm. Oh well. Unstable Canadian writes in, Donnie and the GOP also signed the death warrant for thousands of Americans for love of money and their hatred for Obama. It's referring to how they got rid of the mandate, which we didn't even get to. And they did, 13 million Americans will lose health insurance because of this vote.
And Trump gave a long speech about how he didn't want to brag that this was effectively in the long term repealing Obamacare, but he believes that it is effectively repealing Obamacare.
Yeah. Finally, Captain Jinglepants says, wait, are you saying that corrupt, wealthy, corporatist politicians on either side of the aisle would have voted for the tax bill? No, not Senator Feinstein. No way she'd do something so corrupt. Hashtag primaries are coming. Indeed. JustDemocrats.com/Allison. Go support her progressive opponent. And if you want to volunteer, even better, AllisonHartson.com/volunteer. Let's go get all these corporatists.
Support her primary campaign, not her primary opponent. That'd be Dianne Feinstein, actually.
Yes. Support Feinstein's opponent, progressive yes. Allison Hartson. Okay. One more note for you guys. I'm told of a panic that you need to be aware of. Today's apparently the last day for 20% off on shoptyt.com. So you have to use the promo code Happy Holidays. You get 20% off. And then once, I don't know why we're ending it a couple of days before Christmas, but sad day for you, so you better panic. And here, let me show you 2 hats that are new. One is Resist, that's awesome. And the other one is a little controversial, feminist as fuck. Okay, so that's at shoptyt.com. I'm not kidding, that's what it says.
Aggressive.
Yes,
yeah.
It's almost an aggressive progressive statement. Okay, all right, so last day for 20% off, shoptyt.com. All right, what's next?
Okay, a little bit more taxes for you. An earlier draft of the GOP tax bill led Susan Collins, senator, Republican senator, to vote against it. And so there was hope from some places, not from Cenk, but from some people that she would continue to oppose the bill until she got assurances that it would not destabilize insurance markets and lead to higher insurance premiums. That's what she had said at one point. Of course, she did vote for the bill, and it did pass in no small part thanks to her voting for it. And so as a result of that, the media has criticized her quite a bit. Turns out she does not like that criticism, so we're gonna break it down on today's show. She said, I cannot believe that the press would have treated another senator with 20 years of experience as they have treated me after they focused on her role in its passage. They've ignored everything that I've gotten and written story after story about how I'm duped. How am I duped when all your amendments get accepted? And what's interesting about that is that she apparently agreed to support the bill after Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and President Donald Trump promised to back 2 bills aimed at lowering health insurance premiums. Well, that's good. So if they promised to do those bills, then she didn't get duped, she got what she wanted, and she voted for it. Unfortunately, today happened, and she acknowledged on Wednesday that McConnell and Vice President Pence won't be able to keep their promise to enact the insurance stabilization legislation in exchange for voting for tax reform. She still thinks the insurance stabilization bill will pass, just not as quickly as she hoped, which that would be bad, since that was her today after the vote. That would be bad, but it's worse because hours before the Senate prepared to vote yesterday on a massive overhaul of the American tax system, a host of House Republicans told reporters that the promises made to secure the vote of Senator Susan Collins have no chance of passing the lower chamber and becoming law. That is not the morning after it passed. That's the day before she actually voted on it. So she knew, because it had been reported, that her promises were not going to be kept, and she voted for it anyway. Or another way to put that is that she was duped.
Yeah.
Or lied.
Yeah, Senator Collins, I got good news and bad news for you. Good news is I don't believe you were duped, so congratulations. The bad news is I think you're a liar, and I think you're corrupt, and I think you take legalized bribes. And I think that you know that, and you knew you were going to vote for those tax cuts because your donors told you to, and that's the whole point that you're in office. your voters didn't put you there, your donors put you there. They give you more money than all your opponents. You've always had more money. You always bought TV ads to trick people into believing you were a moderate, because Maine is a fairly moderate state. You're not a moderate. You will do exactly what the rich donors tell you to do. So you knew before the vote that you were never going to get those other pieces of legislation passed. You knew that, in fact, there's some chance that you and McConnell had a meeting internally where you said, okay, what should we pretend publicly you got in return? Because you and I both know it ain't gonna pass the House, even if it was gonna pass the Senate, and you know it ain't even gonna pass the Senate. So where we're gonna what? Prop up some parts of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare? That they're really gonna do that? The Republicans in the Senate that have the majority are gonna do that? And the monsters in the House? And they laughed at her. They said, we're not gonna do that. We'd never want to support even a single letter in Obamacare. So when she came out and said, oh no, I got assurances from Mitch McConnell.
Trump declared it dead today in a speech. He said, I wasn't gonna bring this up. I don't want the media focus on it, but I just killed Obamacare. Yeah, he's gonna prop it up. He's gonna stabilize it for Susan Collins.
Yeah. So when you said publicly that you had gotten those assurances, either you and Mitch got together and said, how shall we actively lie to the American people and my voters? Well, I pretend to be a moderate. How can you help me to perpetuate that lie? Or you told pretty little lies to yourself and thought, no, maybe we'll do it later. But meanwhile, donors, what would you like? Oh, you'd like trillions of dollars in tax cuts. No problem, I can do that. So Susan Collins, you're a corrupt liar. And don't come now, and then she says, oh my God, I just found out there's sexism. I'm a Republican, I never talk about sexism. But if you dare criticize me, all of a sudden I'm gonna realize that I'm a woman. And then I'm gonna say, oh, criticism of me, well that's sexist, well I would never, right? No, we criticize your Republican colleagues in the same exact way. They're also goddamn liars. They're also corrupt. They also voted for this because of their donors. There's no distinction at all. So don't come in here with your BS concern about sexism, your newly found concern about sexism. No. And then he's talking about like, oh my God, they talked about me this way, but they wouldn't talk about Republican senators that way. Are you kidding me? Look, I don't know about the rest of the press.
We just called Ted Cruz a liar, and he's something like a man.
Yes, and so and there's some reference to crying or whatever. Look, it's an ironic thing to do to say, I can't believe they would accuse me of crying, as you're crying about sexism that is made up in your case, and how dare anyone ever criticize you, right? So you're not, it's proverbial crying, not literal crying, okay? But you do it, Paul Ryan does it, Ted Cruz does it. No, you don't get special privileges because you happen to be a female Republican.
I mean, I would have to say though, since we care a lot about the struggle for actual equal rights between men and women, we welcome her to the battle. She will now be fighting for women's rights in all things.
Yeah, look forward to it.
You want to turn to some good news?
Yeah.
Well, at least prospective good news. Okay, we'll move to that now. An activist group in Michigan is working on a ballot measure that could do a lot to massively reform how congressional districts in Michigan are drawn. And in Michigan, they have historically and recently been drawn in a way that is directly beneficial in a partisan sense for Republicans. But in any event, this is what they're trying to do. They acquired a bunch of signatures necessary to get it on the ballot in 2018. They got 425,000 signatures, which is no mean feat. That takes a lot of volunteers and a lot of effort. And it's over 100,000 more than they need to qualify. So even when people come in and try to say that some of them are fake or whatever, they've got a nice little buffer there. So what would their ballot initiative do? It aims to make the redistricting process more fair by amending the Michigan Constitution to create a 13-member redistricting commission with 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 5 independents. So these would be non-politicians. They can't even be a family of politicians as well. They can't be elected officials, lobbyists, consultants, or their family members. None of that. They're supposed to be ideally regular people and a broad mix of political positions. Although I have some potential problems with that, but they have to start somewhere. In addition, while the redistricting process in most states goes on literally behind closed doors, it uses sophisticated software to create these districts that look insane, and people have no idea how it happens, what the timetable is for, any of that. This commission would be required to hold at least 10 public hearings as part of the redistricting process, giving the public an opportunity to ask questions and have their concerns be heard by the commission. And so that is the goal, to set this up. It's an experiment that could hopefully make things more equitable in Michigan. Now, why is this a concern in Michigan? Well, following the 2010 census, Michigan Republicans controlled the redistricting process and drew the lines in such a way that Republicans gained an advantage of 2 to 3 additional seats in Congress. They didn't become more popular in Michigan, but simply because they controlled this process, you suddenly create 2 to 3 additional Republican congressmen. And this is something that we've experienced across the country.
So it's largely Republicans that drive this effort. From time to time, Democrats play along.
Yes.
Now you say, wait, why would the Democratic Party want to lose 2 or 3 seats in a state like Michigan? Well, there's a very good reason for that, because they take more Republican, they design a district so that Republicans can win narrowly by 55, 45, 52, 48, etc. So that way they pick up more seats. And then they give Democrats districts that are like 80, 90% Democrat. So now those Democratic incumbents are thrilled because they're never ever going to lose. So now they've screwed over the rest of the state and Democratic voters because they made their district really safe, but at the expense of handing over
possibly control of Congress.
That's right.
But it's good for them individually.
Yes. So that's why some Democrats play along with this. That's why you need someone like this group to come out of nowhere and go, I don't have a horse in this race about Republicans or Democrats, and I don't care what their politics are. I care about the process and the system, right? So saying, you know what, we're not gonna leave it to the politicians, they're all corrupted. We're gonna actually have regular people do it. I love that. I think this is a wonderful movement. The woman who started, we're gonna ask her to be on Rebel headquarters soon, because it's such a great organic thing that grew up out of Michigan. And then so a Republican operative then said, well, number one, he admitted, and this was a rare moment of honesty for a Republican operative. He said, wow, that was amazing. Normally you have to spend millions of dollars to do a ballot initiative like this. They did it organically, just with volunteers. So he's like, you're gonna put some of us out of business. So
well, and in the end, they'll probably end up going up against a multi-billion-dollar campaign to stop it.
Led by that guy.
Exactly.
Yes. No, that's what's gonna happen.
Yes.
Okay. So he had to admit, man, that was amazing. People power does work. But then he went and turned around and said, now, look, now that he's starting to lobby against it, he's like, you don't want neophytes who don't understand the system drawing these districts. No, yes, I do. I absolutely, positively do. Rather than the corrupt, scummy guys who go into back rooms and do it for their own self-interest and draw preposterous districts so that the politicians pick their voters instead of the voters picking their politicians.
Yes.
No, I don't want that old system. That old system is terrible.
Yeah.
I love this new idea. I would 1,000 times rather have quote unquote neophytes. In other words, actual citizens draw this up. And by the way, they have to do it publicly. And there'll be it'll be open, it'll be transparent, there'll be 1,000 comments on it. Democrats and Republicans will get to weigh in on it. And so if they draw a district like this for anyone's benefit, people call them out. They go, wait a minute, this isn't citizens drawing that district. If it's a Democratic plan, you will know it immediately based on how they draw the districts.
Exactly.
Okay, and it's got to survive that process. It's a great idea. This is how you take democracy back.
And it's entirely possible that the actual distribution of how you create the blah, 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 all that, it could need to be iterated on. But the current system is already inherently flawed, and so any experimentation is a good thing when it comes to this area. And I would add on to your concerns about how some Democrats go along with the process to sort of secure their seat at the expense of the majority, but also it's entirely possible, you can't necessarily find great examples of it in the past few decades, that when the Democrats get in charge of the states, they'll also manipulate the voters into safe districts for themselves. And that's not what we want. What we want is for roughly the popularity of a party to represent the number of seats they have in government. And that's not what we have right now. I mean, an example I was talking about with someone this morning is, we just had this tax bill get passed last night, $1.5 trillion redistributed from the middle and working class to the wealthiest people in America. And who actually made that happen? A Republican Congress voted for it that got fewer votes than Democratic congressional candidates got in the last election. It was also voted for by Republican Senate candidates who got fewer votes than the Democratic Senate candidates in that year. And it's going to be signed by a Republican president who got 3 million votes less than the Democratic presidential candidate. Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people, and that needs to change. Now, this is just at one state. But perhaps if it can exist here, then we can add it to more states and we can hopefully get something more approaching an actual democracy.
Do I want the Mississippi drawn, districts of Mississippi drawn in an absurd way to give Democrats an advantage? No, you know why? Because unlike these greasy politicians, we actually care about democracy. If Mississippi is Republican, it's Republican. Let's go meet them in the battlefield of ideas and try to convince the good folks of Mississippi to become progressives, okay? But if they're not, they're not. I don't believe in cheating, whereas the other side lives and breathes cheating. Yeah. Why? Because if they don't, they'll lose, just as John pointed out. If we did it just based on popular vote, the House, the Senate, and the White House would all be Democratic. So why do you think the Republicans do it? Because they're running out of demographic room and they're cheating in every conceivable way to get any small last advantage, to get the last bit of trillions of dollars for their donors before they inevitably destroy themselves as a party.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take another break.
Yes, we do.
When we come back, more good news, believe it or not, and a shining example of how every vote matters, literally, okay? So we'll be right back and tell you about that. All right, post game here in Studio B. It's a green screen magic of internet television.
A lot of condom breaking stories.
Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of.
When the kid cries, perhaps that's that is an opportunity to do some. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God!
I love that video.
Yeah, Ben, I got a great achoo. You're like, my mouth was open and she sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk.
Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna. When we're off the air, I'm gonna be like, how is this gonna work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
And like at some point you're like, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. What do you mean why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. Here's what's different. Like, it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that, I can't wait to see her.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship, and we don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk and John with you. Wellington Smith writes in on YouTube Super Chat. If you use YouTube Super Chat, we're more likely to read your comment. Plus, it helps the show. Said, Cenk, take the $1,000 and have Jimmy call you the prophet and bow. Then give.
That's not one of the options in the poll.
And then give the money. Hold on. You guys
use it for medicine,
apparently, and then give the money to Just Democrats in California. Okay, so fun fact: Jimmy Dore is going to be on Old School tonight. So, oh boy, now we're going to find out what is going to happen. Is he going to pay the bet? We're going to see what the poll stands at that point. It's neck and neck between let him go and make him pay the $1,000.
Did you tell him you were going to poll it before you polled it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Sad day for him. There it is, tytnetwork.com.
So he might be surprised by this.
/the bet. Okay, and guys, under no circumstances would I have anyone ever bow to me. So that one's off the table, okay? Matt Brownfield says, sounds like Susan Collins is using Hillary Clinton defense. Any and all criticism and or calling out on their lies automatically equals sexism. I would say that is roughly true. Kara Curley says, the only way a Republican can win is to cheat while crying the other side isn't fair. I would also say that's true. Members of the day are Marco Antonio Posamai and Rachel Hall. So thank you guys, really appreciate it. It's right before the holidays, great time to get a gift for a loved one. The gift of Young Turks membership, they can get the whole show ad-free, and Old School tonight where we find out what happens with the bet, and Aggressive Progressive with Jimmy and Steve on Thursdays, and all the post games. We're gonna do a great one today.
And any new shows that get added in the near future?
Okay, oh, interesting. So tytnetwork.com/gift. So that's just $25, gets you 3 months of membership. Either you or someone you care about, have them check it out. It's a great opportunity to do that. tytnetwork.com/gift. Okay, what's next, John?
What's next is some good news with a little bit of a wrinkle. Yesterday, a miracle happened in Virginia. During a recount of a state house seat, it ended with the Democrat, Shelley Simmons, winning by a single vote and causing a tie for control of the state legislature. One vote, the difference between winning and losing, and that the difference between Republicans being in control of the state house or being locked 50-50. A miracle that lasted less than 1 day, because unfortunately a judge has thrown out the whole thing. A 3-judge panel declined to certify the recount of a key House race today, saying that a questionable ballot should be counted in favor of the Republican and tying a race that Democrats had thought they'd won by a single vote. So this one questionable ballot was enough to change the result of this election. Circuit Court Judge Bryant Suggs said the ballot in question contained a mark for Democrat Shelley Simons, as well as a mark for Republican delegate David Yancey, but that the voter had made another mark to strike out Simons' name. Now, of course, they don't have the voter there, so they're sort of assuming that that's what that secondary mark was meant to accomplish. That ballot had been in question before, but previous judges who talked about it allowed it to go through as a vote for the Democrat. The court's decision leaves the race for the 94th district tied at 11,608 votes each for Yancey and Simons, and once again creates a 49-51 split in power for the Republicans. So now you might think, well, if they have the exact same number of votes, what do you do? Do you have another election? No, nothing as sophisticated or complicated as that. James Alcorn, the chairman of the State Board of Elections, said the winner will likely be chosen by drawing a name out of a glass bowl. If the loser of the coin toss, or effectively what amounts to a coin toss, is unhappy with that result, he or she can seek a second recount. And maybe I'm crazy, I don't know these people, but I'm betting whichever way it goes, there will be another recount.
Yeah, I'm picturing.
Just do another recount.
Yeah, the whole bowl coin thing is insane. Like I'm picturing the Republican going, oh, I lost the coin toss. Well, golly gee, I guess I'm going home. Yeah, nobody's going to do that. Okay,
no.
I could see a Democrat doing it, but
maybe
right,
like Gore.
So, well, he fought it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
We now know for a fact that every vote matters.
Yes.
Now, look, I get super frustrated, and especially at the national level, I think that we've lost our democracy in a lot of ways because first the donors pick who you're going to vote for, and then in the general election, you always have a lesser of two evils, et cetera, right? But at the state level, no, often there is, and I've said this a million times because I've experienced it at Wolfpack. We're trying to get money out of politics and we're at the state level. Oftentimes Republicans, a lot of Republicans vote to get money out of politics. And they actually care, they actually listen to their constituents, Democrats and Republicans do. And here, there's not that much money drowning a race like that. You've got a real race, and it turns out it's decided by one vote or less. How do you get less than a vote? Well, if it's a tie. But every single vote mattered because if one less Republican had shown up, she would clearly be the winner. If one less Democrat had showed up, he would clearly be the winner.
Yeah.
So
as long as they had good penmanship.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it's not just one isolated case of a single election, but it affects the entire balance of power.
Yeah.
So one person in Virginia decides whether the Republicans or the Democrats control the whole state legislature. That's amazing.
Yeah, like the expansion of Medicaid could depend on one guy saying, I'll pause Stranger Things, I'll go vote, I'll come back and watch it.
By the way, if you didn't get out there and vote for Simons, well,
you're the devil.
I don't know about that.
Okay, maybe not.
But you might have cost the Democrats the state.
Now it gets a little bit more complicated even. So they're gonna do their little drawn out of a fishbowl, and then they're inevitably gonna have another recount. They should probably just have another election. But we also have on Wednesday, officials were recounting ballots cast in Richmond's District 68, where the Democrat leads by 336 votes. Again, out of a couple tens of thousands. And a recount is set for Thursday for District 28, where the Republican leads by 82 votes. Democrats have already challenged that race in federal court, where they're seeking a new election because more than 100 voters were mistakenly given ballots for the wrong legislative district. That being enough that theoretically that could have actually swung the election as well. So more recounts coming. I don't know if they'll be as exciting as this one was.
Yep. All right, go, and if look, next time there's an election, especially in a place like Virginia where it's just totally up in the air, make sure you go out and vote. And in primaries, it's also going to be a huge difference. The incumbents and the corporatists have huge advantages because they've got built-in brand name recognition and they've got a lot of money. So the only way to beat them is if you all show up and vote.
Exactly. And by the way, just as a historical footnote, I believe the number, the last time it was this same pairing, Democrat versus Republican. Last time around, she didn't tie his vote. She was down 15 points. And this time, suddenly, she ties him exactly. That's a pretty big change.
We could have such an enormous progressive wave. JusticeDemocrats.com/win. Go.
I will admit, I don't know her politics specifically, so I can't attest to her.
Oh yeah, I hear you. She's not a just Democrat.
Benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
But yes. Okay, let's move to something slightly different. The Trump administration's decision to move the US Embassy to Jerusalem has been almost universally opposed internationally. It's been very clear, aside from us. And there was one other country that was a fan of it, but the rest were not a fan of it. That has been clear. And so it's not really a surprise that the UN is planning a vote to condemn the US moving their embassy in that fashion. But it turns out if they hold that vote and if countries vote to condemn the US, there could be big monetary consequences. So they're gonna have an emergency session on Thursday to vote on the controversial US decision. The motion is expected to pass easily, but it will not be non-binding. That doesn't mean it won't be carefully watched. So if we could bring up this tweet here, you're gonna see Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, saying at the UN, we're always asked to do more and give more. So when we make a decision at the will of the American people, it was one of the most important things to the American people was moving that embassy, about where to locate our embassy, we don't expect those we've helped to target us. On Thursday, there will be a vote criticizing our choice. The US will be taking names. And that was largely echoed by Donald Trump on Wednesday, where he said the US would be watching those votes in the General Assembly, and more importantly, they take hundreds of millions of dollars and even billions of dollars, and then they vote against us. Well, we're watching those votes. Let them vote against us. We'll save a lot. We don't care.
Well, that last sentence is the one true thing that Donald Trump has said. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about the world. He doesn't care that the whole world is against him. John and I were talking about this before we got on air. If the entire world voted against me, I'd be a little concerned. I'd double check, like, wait, am I positive I'm right?
Yeah.
Right? For Trump, doesn't care at all. Well, if you're taking names, Nikki Haley, here, I've got a name for you, Sheldon Adelson. he's an enormous donor to the Republican Party and an enormous donor to Donald Trump. And reports were that Donald Trump, before moving the embassy, checked with donors like Adelson. And he got his orders from Adelson that, yes, you will be moving the embassy. So don't patronize us by telling us the American people want to move the embassy. If you polled Americans, do you want to move the embassy? Do you want the US embassy in Israel to be Tel Aviv or Jerusalem? You would get probably 78% saying, I don't know.
Yeah, or buzz off.
Yeah, that is not, it's not an issue that's burning up the internet or anywhere else. Like, oh my God, it should be Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. Now there are some people who are very, very interested in that, mainly evangelical Christians, right? Because they would like for the world to end and for 7 billion people to be slaughtered by their Yahweh, okay? And part of the way that the slaughter in Armageddon happens is if you how Israel crushes and kills all the Palestinians or whatever their sick fantasies are, right? So, but no, all the American people did not agree to that. That's not what they voted on. You're making that up. Now, if you have any sense of pride, the rest of the world, all those different countries, you're not going to let Donald Trump boss you around. And let me tell you here, we're in America. We follow the politics day in and day out. This is the last gasp of the angry white man in America. So if you think that you're going to gain favor in America by siding with Donald Trump, that will be a very short-lived victory. Progressives are going to win in astounding numbers in the future. Even in the state of Alabama, the reddest state there is, 60% of the people under the age of 45 vote Democrat. So this is the last time that you have to worry about monsters like Donald Trump. Vote no against Donald Trump. Vote against them, vote against them. If you have your leaders cow to Donald Trump, you should replace them immediately. That's pathetic. And by the way, sometimes it's not your enemies that vote against you, it's your friends. Why? Because it's a friend that keeps you out of a stupid bar fight that you shouldn't get into, that you're gonna get clobbered in. So look back at what happened in the UN vote during the Iraq war. We came in and we asked people to vote for it. It turns out brave people like the French that voted no were right. They were right and they were trying to help us, not hurt us. If we had listened to our allies, we would have been in much greater shape. Instead, you had cowards like Tony Blair, pathetic lapdog for George W. Bush, that led Britain into that war. And what did it get him? All it got was heartache, loss of lives, money,
lots of money.
And the loss of respect as Tony Blair became the lapdog for another Republican leader in America.
Yeah, and the long-term destabilization of the region that we are still suffering from, and they've suffered far more. Are we going to this last story, or is that, I mean, we're pretty over?
Yeah, last story.
Okay, I thought you might say that. Thanks to the tax bill passing last night, Donald Trump is incredibly proud with himself, even for Donald Trump, but not as proud as Mike Pence is. I want you to prepare yourself. This is some epic ass kissing. Let's watch.
In the future, we ask in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Ben. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Mike, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. President. As I told you last night, shortly after the Senate vote, I know I speak on behalf of the entire cabinet and of millions of Americans when I say congratulations and thank you. Thank you for seeing through the course of this year an agenda that truly is restoring this country. You described it very well, Mr. President. From the outset of this administration, we've been rebuilding our military, putting the safety and security of the American people first. You've restored American credibility on the world stage. We're standing with our allies. We're standing up to our enemies. But you promised economic renewal at home. You said we could make this economy great again. And you promised to roll back regulations. And you signed more bills rolling back federal red tape than any president in American history. You've unleashed American energy. You've spurred an optimism in this country that's setting records. But you promised the American people in that campaign a year ago that you would deliver historic tax cuts. And it would be a middle-class miracle. And in just a short period of time, that promise will be fulfilled. And I'm deeply humbled as your vice president to be able to be here because of your leadership, Mr. President, and because of the strong support of leadership in the Congress of the United States. You're delivering on that middle-class miracle. You've actually got the Congress to do, as you said, what they couldn't do with Anwar for 40 years. You've got the Congress to do with tax cuts for working families and American businesses what they haven't been able to do for 31 years. And you got Congress to do what they couldn't do for 7 years in repealing the individual mandate in Obamacare. I know you would have me also acknowledge people around this table, Mr. President. I want to thank the leaders in Congress once again for their partnership in this. I want to thank your outstanding team, your Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin, for Gary Cohen, for Ivanka Trump, for your great legislation, all the members of this cabinet who partnered to drive your vision forward over the past 6 months after you laid out that vision for tax reform. But mostly, Mr. President, I'll end where I began and just tell you, I want to thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank you for speaking on behalf of and fighting every day for the forgotten men and women of America. Because of your determination, because of your leadership, the forgotten men and women of America are forgotten no more, and we are making America great again. Thank you, Mr. President. God bless you.
Okay, I found out there's a new word called scromiting, screaming while vomiting. And now I know what it means. Okay.
Wow.
So,
but really, one really quick thing. Pence, we like to say that he's stupid. He's not stupid. He is a genius. Because that is the only thing Donald Trump wants out of you, is for you to verbally fillet him for 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
Well, so that was one of the most gross acts I've seen in politics in a long time. And no, you're absolutely right, John. It is actually a smart thing to do. One, it curries favors with the president, but more importantly, it curries favor with the president's base, who also like to fillet him. And so if the president was ever to step down for some reasons, or was forced out of office, Mike Pence then can turn around and go, hey, Trump base, remember how much I was up the president's ass? And so I'm on your side, and I certainly had nothing to do with it. There's actually a very credible report out that he was orchestrating a coup during the general election after the Access Hollywood tapes. Hey, and he went to the Republican leaders and donors and said, if Trump goes down, make sure it's me, 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 me.
Yes, a procedural coup, to be clear for Fox viewers.
Yes.
Nobody's killing anybody.
No, he did not have any tanks, okay? And so Mike Pence is a totally two-faced politician, always has been. And I like how he said, I'm gonna end where I began, on my knees, pretty much. And so last two things on this, he said, he kept saying, you got them to do it. All these things, it's as if the Republicans didn't want to give tax cuts to the rich. They were dying to give tax cuts to the rich.
Or that some other Republican president would have vetoed the tax bill.
And what
he was
leadership?
irrelevant. And what did he do to get this done?
Nothing. They were dying to do it. They wanted to drill in Anwar. They wanted to give tax cuts to the rich. They wanted to repeal the mandate. Congratulations, Mr. President. You got them to do exactly what they wanted.
Thanks to you, the sun rose and fell. The moon continued its path through the night sky because of you, dear leader.
But Pence proved that all of this was an effort to kiss ass when he mentioned one name, Ivanka Trump, because she had nothing on top of nothing to do with the tax bill. No one even claimed, not Trump, not Ivanka, no one claimed that she had anything to do with the tax bill. As he's going around the room, okay, the Treasury Secretary McConnell, that might make sense. When he got to Ivanka Trump, because he knows Donald Trump, that's the only person that he has any chance of loving outside of himself is his daughter. He thinks his sons are idiots, etc. Like it barely, his narcissism is so strong, but it barely has an intersecting circle with Ivanka, right? So he knows that appeals to Trump. So he's like, and your daughter was great, Ivanka Trump. And so Trump's like, yes.
It was suspicious when he gave credit to Ivanka Trump, but when he threw in that Tiffany was worthless in getting it passed, that seemed egregious to me.
So I'd like to thank Mike Pence for what we'll now see in the dictionary, since it's online, you can see the video version of what it means to scrum it. Okay. All right, we're way out of time.
Yes.
And by the way, just anybody, if you guys get any word if Mike Pence has exited Donald Trump's anus, let us know. Tweet about it.
I'm gonna scrum it.
Okay. And when we come back, we got a lot of great stories for you guys, including a Minnesota Republican who says she can't risk ever being alone in a room with kids because of what happened to Roy Moore. Okay.
And even more importantly, you guys are gonna finally adjudicate, have the libs destroyed Star Wars?
Oh, the Star Wars controversy and how it's political is awesome. All right, super last thing. Jimmy's coming for Old School tonight. If you're a member, you can watch it live, tyrtnetwork.com/gift. Get membership for 3 months for $25. Anyway, but keep voting because tonight on Old School, we settle it, okay? tyrtnetwork.com/thebet. We'll see if what Jimmy should pay me for our bet in October of 2015 on Trump. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Brett Ehrlich joins us. Real quick tweets. Zappa fan writes in, did that crazy person in Alabama concede yet? No, not to our knowledge, he hasn't. Teely Q writes in, net neutrality came down to 1 yes vote. Well, that's true, but that's an FCC commissioner, right. So it's a little bit different, but I hear you. Enrique Rodriguez talking about that tie vote in Virginia says, sounds like a bad Will Ferrell movie. Agree to disagree. I actually think that movie about campaign, I forget its name.
The Campaign.
The Campaign,
yeah.
right?
Zach Galifianakis.
It was Zach Galifianakis, was surprisingly funny.
Yeah.
You should go watch that movie. It's actually pretty damn good.
Yeah. I think it's one of the most underrated Will Ferrell movies.
Yes, underrated, really underrated. Maybe we'll talk about it in old school. Okay, and Grandpa's Bag, interesting, says, that's some great ass kissing for a homophobe. Interesting for Mike Pence. I know this, he won't want to be in a room alone with Donald Trump without his wife. Okay. All right, guys, the Jimmy Dore vote is unbelievable. There's now over 31,000 votes. Okay,
that's insane.
Okay, tytnetwork.com/thebet, and it is so close. $500 is out of the contention. It's down to 6.4%. $1,000 is leading with 47.1%.
Of course it is.
To 46.5%.
This could come down to 1 vote.
We might have to do a recount.
You know what that recount would be? It would just be like clicking reload on the page. All right.
Okay. This too might come down to 1 vote. Every vote matters.
Why am I nervous? It has nothing to do with me, but I'm so physically nervous.
Well, you're going to be there when Jimmy and I settle it tonight. So whatever the final vote is, it matters. There's actually something on the line.
Oh,
okay. And by the way, I was just told that the hats I told you about earlier in the show, Resist and Feminist as Fuck, they've already sold out. So sad day for you. Go home. No, I'm kidding. They sold out, but they're going to be back in stock tomorrow. Okay. So, but on the other hand, today's the last day of the 20% off. Anyway, resolve it somehow. ShopTYT.com. Use the promo code Happy Holidays for the 20% off.
To reiterate, these do not exist. These are sold out. These 2 hats that I have in my hand do not exist. You can't have them.
They'll be back tomorrow. Okay, all right, let's go.
Okay, let's go to Minnesota. A Minnesota lawmaker refused to meet with a group of high school Democrats from her district because, according to her story, she's afraid it would end up with a sexual assault claim. This is a strange tale that we'll take you to the beginning of. Here she is, first of all, Mary Franson. She is a representative from Minnesota's state legislature. The Alexandria Area High School Democrats is the name of the group that asked to meet with her one-on-one, or I guess group and her in her legislative office. This is how she replied. She says, I don't meet with partisan groups in my office. Besides, isn't your group actively campaigning against me? One of your members is soliciting funds for my opponent. Also, why aren't you trying to meet with the state senator in the same district, so in the same area? And the Democratic group was like, well, isn't it our job to meet and discourse back and forth and have discussions about both sides of debates? And we are overall, after all, your constituents. She tweets back at them saying, AAHS Dems is a partisan group. This is a high school group. And then she adds, thanks for playing. They come back and say, well, isn't it your duty to meet with constituents? And then she responds, it's not a legislator's duty to meet with a proudly partisan Democrat group. And then that thing, they're like, nah. And we'll get, and this is before all the weird, I don't want to be Roy Moore stuff, but I wanted to pause here. And like, she's interfacing with high school students, yet she seems like the child here.
So this is an odd story for me to do defense of local Republicans. And yes, from time to time we cover Republicans at the state level that are just totally cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? And she appears to be one of them, as you're gonna see later in the story. But a lot of local Republicans at the state level, through my experience at Wolfpack, which is a nonpartisan group trying to get money out of politics, actually will listen to you. They do take meetings. with constituents. They're not going to take a meeting necessarily with an out-of-state group, but all of our volunteers are in-state. And they do, they hear them out, and sometimes they even change their minds. That's why when you actually see democracy, it's just a wonderful thing to behold, when your representative actually represents you. So she doesn't represent all Republicans at the state level. And so if it's a high school group, you should be meeting with them. On the other hand, I'm not like, if it was just this, we wouldn't have even, I don't think we would have done the story. Like, it is a Democratic group, they're high school students, you should meet with them, they're your constituents, but it's not the end of the world if you don't meet with a Democratic group.
But it seems like nothing but positive optics to be like, I sat down with a group of high schoolers and had a conversation. But she didn't, she refused to go one-on-one with them. She kind of invited them to some volunteer event, but she says, I don't wanna meet with you guys. And then pressed on why, Think Progress and got their hands on a private Facebook post that she made saying this in response. A man's life was destroyed in Alabama. 40 years ago, he met with minors alone, and they recently accused him of horrendous actions. In the world of we must believe every sexual harassment claim, I would think my approach is beyond reasonable. All it takes is one perceived action and my life is destroyed. The life of my family is destroyed. That is a risk I will not take. Why did she take it there?
God, man, that's so weird, man.
It's so strange.
What is it with female Republicans from Minnesota and their wild eyes? Obviously, I'm referring to Michelle Bachmann. You remember Michelle Bachmann used to hide in the bushes of LGBT events to try to surprise lesbians. They're so strange.
I don't even understand how.
Yeah, like she would jump out of the bushes and be like, I got you. And they're like, yeah, it's an LGBT event. You didn't get us for anything.
That's so weird.
She's such a weirdo. Okay, and this lady's a weirdo too. She even looks like Bachmann a tiny bit. Anyway, so under her logic, you can never meet with anyone alone.
No.
And a man can't, a woman can't. Look, if she said, hey, listen, I don't want to joke around anymore about sex at work anymore. We used to be able to do, but we can't.
Right.
You say, okay, yeah, I hear you, I understand, and you probably shouldn't, and especially because you're the boss, because you're a representative, etc. But if you like out of nowhere, you're like high school kids. I mean, Roy Moore was accused of ripping one girl's clothes off and trying to force her head down into his genitals. I mean, you weren't planning to do that with the high school students, were you?
Mm-hmm. Well, like, why don't you just solve the problem, have them to your office and just have someone else there? Like, this is not the problem. It's strange. And then also, in addition to blocking the leader of this group on Facebook, and who was incidentally a 17-year-old kid, that leader of the group, whose name is Jack Ballou, was really confused by all this. He said, if any of what she said was true, she could have just told us initially that she doesn't meet with minors. Why'd she change it to the Roy Moore thing, essentially? I'm also so confused how she started defending Roy Moore. Last year, I met with Mary through the student page program, one-on-one at her office. She had no issue then. It's just, and that's what gets me to like, maybe she, as a Republican out in the, a state representative somewhere in Minnesota, in Alexandria, Minnesota, she is kind of adopting this Trump, let's tweet colloquially, we'll use emojis and this weird, instead of sad, she cuts and pastes like this emoji, which involves like a Japanese character. Like it's not like you can just make that, you have to go cut and paste it from somewhere. And then to invoke Roy Moore, which is like the flavor of the day. Maybe she's a little behind, hasn't really read into what the consequences of this last election really mean. It's just this strange knee-jerk reaction communication over social media that's very strange to me.
Yeah, and she certainly didn't do herself any favors by comparing herself to Roy Moore. Not a savvy political move at a bare minimum. And finally, I'd like to say, Ballou, you're my boy. I screwed that up. You're my boy, Ballou.
Ballou, the runner, the guy who runs that group.
How did I screw that up? Anyway.
You did great. Just some other tasty morsels about her. I did some research about this particular representative. She's one of the authors of a constitutional ban on same-sex marriage, HF 1613, produced in 2011. She objected to a House floor opening prayer, which you're like, oh, she objected to a prayer. Why would a Republican do that? Because it mentioned Earth Day. And it linked Earth Day and concern for the earth related to an oil spill that had just happened, the oil spill in the Gulf. And she said it might have been a prayer to Mother Earth, some kind of weird pagan thing. And then she also, on food stamps, said, isn't it ironic the food stamp program, part of the Department of Agriculture, is pleased to be distributing the greatest amount of food stamps ever. Meanwhile, the Park Service, also part of the Department of Agriculture, asks us to please not feed the animals because the animals may grow dependent and not learn to take care of themselves, comparing people who receive assistance to animals at the park. Nice little tidbit. She seems awesome. She actually seems really nice. When I read about it.
Jesus, man, we got some bad people in office.
All right, so there's that. Now we will move on to Rosie O'Donnell. How does that sound?
Well, let's see.
Rosie O'Donnell is in the news. Why? Because she's the entertainer of our generation. No, that's not true. There she is, Rosie O'Donnell. She was great in League of Their Own. I will not disparage her whatsoever. And I used to watch the Rosie O'Donnell show all the time. But she is in the news because she tweeted this. Let's take a look at her tweet. She said, all right, so that's Susan, $2 million cash. Call if you want to negotiate. Do you think your family is proud of you, Senator Collins? Woman, mother, grandmother, sister, daughter, you have betrayed us all. Dear God, ask for forgiveness, redeem your soul tomorrow, hashtag not sexist. This was her follow-up to a tweet saying this, and we don't have the graphic for this, but she says, so how about this? I promise to give $2 million to Senator Susan Collins and $2 million to Senator Jeff Flake. If they vote no, I will not kill Americans for the super rich. So she votes no, I will not kill Americans for the super rich. DM me Susan, DM me Jeff. No shit, $2 million cash each. So Rosie O'Donnell is offering $2 million apiece to these two senators in the lead up to the senatorial vote on the tax bill to get them to vote no.
Yeah.
Which brings a question immediately to mind. How does she have $4 million still?
Oh, she worked in TV back in the days when they just handed out tens of millions of dollars.
I remember those days.
Yeah, we missed those days. Anyway, so let me begin the defense of Rosie O'Donnell. First of all, some people are saying, that might be an illegal act. Okay, so first of all, we legalized bribery, so let's get over this, right? Susan Collins took all of her campaign donations are in essence bribes. And same with Jeff Flake, same with Bob Corker, same with all the Republicans and most of the Democrats. So don't pretend to be outraged. Oh my God, turns out there's money in politics, really? So she's making a point. If you're gonna get bribed, let me at least be open about it. If, and say, hey, instead of taking the dark money or the campaign contributions, if that's what you're doing, let's acknowledge it. And since we don't have elections anymore, we have auctions. Okay, I bid $2 million. But instead of trying to make sure 13 million people lose their health insurance, that's a reference to people dying, right? Which is what's going to happen when they take away the mandate. That is the estimate of nonpartisan groups. She's saying, can I pay $2 million to keep people alive? It seems pretty fair, right? And then the hashtag not sexist, I love that reference too, because Susan Collins is like, if you criticize me on the tax bill, you're sexist. No, we criticize Ted Cruz, we criticize you just the same. You don't get a pass for being a woman. And Rosie's pointing that out. So far, I love every part of it.
Yeah, but folks are citing, 18 section 201B, where if she was, prosecuted because of this, she would face a fine of up to $12 million, 15 years, disqualified from holding any office of honor. And again, as you said, what's striking to me is how I've really come across all different kinds of what seems like bribery. Like we have the actual code here, so it's graphic 30A. This is the code that she is accused, by people who are starting ruckus of violating. Whoever directly or indirectly corruptly gives, offers, or promises anything of value to any public official or person who has been selected to be a public official, or offers or promises any public official or any person who has been selected to be a public official to give anything of value, anything, whatever, any other person or entity, just blah, 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 with the intent to influence any official act. And then there's 3 other conditions, which right there is just everything about money in politics, and not just like general donations where it's like, I'm paying you this so you can cut the corporate tax rate, but also the things that were happening as were being reported on through the entire process of reconciliation and drafting this bill, where it was hastily written together and then they just leaked little tidbits about, here's this provision that not only benefits Donald Trump directly. The New York Times pointed out that he and his family are the #1 winners of this tax bill, but also Bob Corker, who jumps on after that provision Sirota reported about was thrown in, and then that list of a dozen more senators who directly benefit from things that were thrown into the tax bill to, quote, influence any official act.
Who are we kidding?
I know, it's so bad. I hate
this
the
is
feeling
so
that I have.
stupid. This is, all right, listen, you want to arrest all the donors? Deal, let's do it. I'll throw Rosie under the bus if we are allowed to arrest all the big donors and the corporate donors. If we're allowed to arrest everyone that uses dark money to influence politicians. Now think about it. So a corporation is not a good person. It's not a person at all. So the first time a corporation gives money to a politician, it is to buy them to get a return on investment. But the second time they give to a politician, that means that they got their return on investment. So they wanted to influence them, they did influence them, they wanted to get the result, they got the result. They're all corrupt. So like all of a sudden, people being like, oh, Rosie, you're trying to influence a politician with money. Oh, come on.
Right. It's all posturing. But the corporations or people thing is true now. Like the pass-through, the real estate pass-throughs are literally, it's a corporation in the name of one person with no employees. And they get a favorable tax rate now. That is, corporations are person. Not corporations or people, and the multiple persons who have been given huge handouts were the 16 listed in the report that showed exactly who benefits from this.
I've gone and talked in front of, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people, and I have never had a single human being raise their hand when I ask the question, do you think a corporation is a human being or a person? No actual person believes that. In Washington, they all raise their hands. So, well, of course, corporations are some of the best people I know, right? and when they give money, it's out of the goodness of their person's heart, right? When Rosie does it, oh my gosh, she's trying to save people's lives. What a corrupt person.
Yeah.
The outrage over that, the fall outrage over that is hilarious.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of the kind of people who are jumping in, throwing a fuss over this, Ben Shapiro waded into the waters. We're gonna go to Graphic 34, he tweeted, if Trump orders Sessions to investigate Rosie, he will be carved into Rushmore by Friday. To which Rosie so eloquently responded, suck my D, Ben. So yeah, I really like the level of discourse in general going on here. I like Rosie O'Donnell's performances. It's just, I don't know, like the idea that Trump would be carved into Mount Rushmore for going after Rosie O'Donnell. Does anyone care that much about Rosie O'Donnell? Like, no.
Okay,
yeah, it's a lot.
So I had a debate with Ben Shapiro. He defended money in politics. He thinks it's rich people's right to speech. I mean, when the Koch brothers or Adelson or Soros or Bloomberg put all this money in, they're just talking. They're just talking. And when Adelson, I think, gave $25 million to Newt Gingrich and similar numbers to Trump, Robert Mercer gave $13 million to Ted Cruz and then even more to Trump. They didn't give them tens of millions of dollars. They were just having conversation with them. And did they intend to influence them? No, Shapiro will tell you, no. They just were talking, they were having a conversation. And it's their right to have a conversation like that. And corporations, since they're human beings, they also love to have conversations. And in their conversations, they give billions of dollars to politicians, and in return, they get trillions of dollars. What a fun conversation that was, right? And then he turns around and pretends to be outraged that Rosie wants money in politics. And then he pretended to be outraged about the dick comment, okay? And like, oh my God, what does he pretend like it was anti-LGBT or something?
Yeah,
like Rosie's LGBT.
It's like homophobic.
Yeah, I know, Ben. Right wingers, you care a lot about homophobia. Ben, day and night, they're like, homophobia.
Yeah, he tweeted #MeToo as a response to that.
Yeah, I know. You've been abused, Ben. I know.
It's so bad. All right, so that's what we have on Rosie O'Donnell. We got more after the break, including Matt Atchity will be here to talk about this Star Wars story that was teased earlier.
Yeah, there's a controversy going around, and was Rotten Tomatoes, and Matt used to run us, the expert there. The audience voting, not the critic voting, did people jimmy the audience voting? Is it rigged? And why was it rigged in the case of Star Wars? And is it political? So that's a super interesting conversation. We'll talk about it when we come back. Here at TYT headquarters, we are building independent media. We're literally building it. It's not done yet. I've got a great offer for you guys. 3 months of membership for just $25. You can gift it to friends and family. This is a good time to gift things, as you can tell, because I'm wearing a Santa hat. Help us build independent media and hold the establishment accountable with just $25. This is not $25. It's a lovely JFK gold coin, which I will now eat. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like physically?
Yeah. Okay. What? You don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to like do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. You don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost never.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Stupid! You're so stupid!
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Brett. Brendan Wares writes in, anyone that thought Trump would sign a tax bill that would hurt him financially is an idiot. You want the working class to catch a break? Elect someone from the working class. For example, Allison Hartson in California. So AllisonHartson.com/volunteer. Gabby writes in, imagine if a Democratic state legislator refused to meet with a high school Christian club. GOP and Fox News would declare a jihad against them that would never end. Yes, and then Weston Cruz says, anybody want to take a bet that she will still meet privately with her donors? Oh, that's a great
good burn.
point.
That's a really good burn.
Yeah, there's no way. Oh my God, Weston, you're getting some sort of shirt or something from shoptyt.com. I haven't done that in a while, so congrats. Everybody else, God bless you. Tweet in, we'll read it obviously. If we like it, we'll give you something free. Anyway, but for the holidays, make sure, today's apparently the last day of the 20% discount. Shoptyt.com and use the promo code Happy Holidays to get that discount. The Resist hats are coming back tomorrow. Okay, all right, what's next?
Okay, I'll start that again. Are social justice warriors ruining Star Wars? Now, this is a theory, this weird thread that's going around, and it started with this. Let's look at the graphic 37. It's the Rotten Tomato meter versus the audience score. Now, if you look at the top critics, 93% of all critics approve of this film. That is the percentage of critics who like the film, 93%. And then the audience score, however, is 54%. Now, this happens a lot, but usually not with giant blockbuster films. Usually, for giant blockbusters, the critics hate it, and the audience is like, it's not that bad. So folks started looking around to see why this might be, and certain people have kind of glommed on to a message that says that essentially social justice warriors are ruining the film. We'll go with the first quote here, that is, the commenters are littered with the comments are littered with one-star reviews that read politically correct to the point of boredom about the film, SJW propaganda, and I'm frustrated that feminism and diversity have made their way into this film. This has ruined Star Wars for me as well as my kids. Keep liberalism out of it and stop ruining once good things. Pointed out by Martin Dobney of The Telegraph. We also have Matt Atchity, formerly of Rotten Tomatoes, head honcho over there. Now, you know him here, of course, from What the Flick.
Hello.
So
have this conversation.
Yeah. So Matt, first of all, when you ran Rotten Tomatoes, this would have stuck out, right? This would have been a strange situation where, because the critics are usually tougher on movies than the audience is, right?
Typically, that's not always the case. Sometimes you'll end up with a movie that the critics like Drive, that the audience doesn't like as much. But that's usually a case of the marketing materials not giving the audience giving them something to expect that was different than what they delivered. Because Drive, if you remember those trailers, made it look like Fast and Furious, and that movie is slow and serious. But I don't really ever and you know this from when I was still there, I never put much stake in audience scores for a couple of reasons. Not the least of which, you have no idea that anyone is seeing the movie itself. In my mind, there's three types of bullshit in the world. There's general run-of-the-mill civilian bullshit. There's what comes out of the White House these days. And then above that is any numeric representation of an audience reaction to a movie, because it's bullshit.
It's just not a scientific poll. People can just go on and actively say, like, I hate this movie because I read that we're supposed to. Yeah. And we'll just do that.
Well, there's some of that. And also in 2014, when Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas movie came out, that got a wonderful 0 on the tomato meter. And he went on Facebook telling his fans to go on the audience score and vote it up. So ultimately, can it be manipulated by somebody's kind of social agenda? Absolutely. And so you've got people on the right who are really upset about representation in the movies, and I think they're lashing out and marking this movie down because it's hey, let's not, I only want to see white men in my movies.
Yeah, so I guess, so there's two different layers here. One layer is the so-called mystery of who voted down the movie and why they did. So I read a really long explanation. Well, it's because some people didn't like the jokes, or some of the fans were disappointed because they didn't follow their theories as much. No, none of that happened. No one downvoted it to this degree because it told too many jokes. No, this is political. This is troll 101. So if you're not familiar with the internet and you're just a movie critic, you might be like, oh, it could have been a couple of different reasons. No, this is exactly what trolls do.
Right, and to the credit of the film itself, it got higher box office returns throughout the weekend. It wasn't one of those things where word of mouth got out and it started tanking. We'll see more next week, but I will go out on a limb here and say that this Star Wars Episode 8 is going to do just fine, and that people by and large will really, really enjoy it.
No, by any other metric, and including the most important one, which is box office results, people love it. It's yet another stupid right-wing thing on the internet where they get way too much attention when they're a minuscule minority. So in reality, there aren't a lot of people like, oh my God, Star Wars had too many minorities and too many women. I just will not go. So that's like 7 alt-right trolls.
Oh my God. So I read this article, first of all, by Martin Daubney, who, you look it up, he's a friend of Milo Yiannopoulos. So let's take anything he says in that context, right? Because if you're a friend with Milo, then your point of view is suspect at best. The other issue is, look, like you want to complain about liberalism in Star Wars, look at the first trilogy. The Empire is all exclusively evil white dudes dressed like Nazis, and the rebels are the ones who have like aliens fighting with them. Right?
Are they illegal aliens?
According to that empire, they absolutely are. Lucas has said over and over again, he said in 81 that during a story conference that the emperor was supposed to be Nixon. In a 2005 interview with the Chicago Tribune, he had said that he conceived of the original Star Wars as an allegory for the Vietnam War, in that the rebels are basically the Viet Cong fighting this technologically overwhelming force, and they win. So, you got to look at Lucas coming out in the 70s and the environment, 10 years after The Summer of Love, or a few years after, he's got this liberal sensibility that's against the establishment, and the establishment at that time is that ill-fated Nixon administration that dragged us into Vietnam. And so there's a liberalism baked into Star Wars to begin with. So for somebody to say, oh, there's too much liberalism in it now, I'm sorry, did you not watch any of these other movies?
Yeah, also like the feminist angle, Leia runs the whole, like she's in charge of the resistance. And there's this quote, I think we can go to the graphic 40. It says, on a highly amusing online thread called Is Star Wars The Force Awakens, the previous film, feminist propaganda, one commenter claims Rey does not need to work at anything. She's naturally awesome just by being a woman. The commenter writes before adding, the male support is bumbling and has an episode of acute cowardliness. Like, did you watch the first one? Leia has her stuff together, the boys show up and she's like, someone's gotta save our skins, and then she gets everybody out of the situation. She's the level-headed one. And then the bout of cowardliness, like they yell at Han for leaving, like taking the money and running. And then he has to have like a change of heart, not to spoil a film from the late 70s, to come back and help the resistance.
Then they rescue him in the third movie. He's the damsel in distress.
Yeah, and by the way, it is not unfair to men. Poe and Finn in this latest movie are incredibly heroic. And so I don't, like, Finn is black, so I guess that doesn't count. I mean, like, we're talking to a bunch of weirdo racists. We're having this conversation, right? And I don't know what Poe is, both in real life, I don't know exactly.
Oscar Isaac, I don't
know.
Latino.
He's Latino. Okay, well then he's out.
Right.
Okay.
No, but that's what it is. That's what it is. For decades, we've had all these hero stories that are white dudes almost exclusively, and now we have to see. Oh my God! Now we have to see other representation in our hero stories. Forget it. I can't handle it.
They haven't said. They say it's different, but they don't say what about the difference is bad. They're saying that changing the formula makes it bad, but they were white dudes for no reason, and you could say like now they're mixed races for there's no reason. I mean, for representation's sake, but it's different. And it's not worse.
It's conservatism in a nutshell, right? Like, we want the same thing to be like it was because it worked for us and it made us feel special, and God forbid we have to share that.
And they're just painting by numbers.
That's such a great point by Matt. And the whole evil empire is a fascist evil empire. So if you root for fascism, sorry, there's not going to be a lot of movies that are on your side. You know why? Because they want to sell tickets, and people don't like to root for the evil empire. Okay, sorry, that's not human nature. So, and I guess they fancy themselves the good guys. I don't know how they make that like, oh, racism is awesome. Being racist is good guys. Being against women is good guys.
Those aliens need to know their place.
Yeah, the aliens. I don't know why they weren't pissed. I get Luke Skywalker and Han Solo were white dudes. I guess were they mad at the original Star Wars because of Yoda? What is this green alien doing here? Right?
He's green. What is that, Mother Earth?
Yeah. So get over it, and no one should ever pay any attention to these absolute clowns. Star Wars, by the way, I saw it was a great movie, and I didn't like it because it was a liberal plot, right? Where goodness actually wins is not a liberal plot, and if you think it is, there's something wrong with you. Then you're admitting that your side are the bad guys.
Yeah, it's the same, and they all want to write this. We're gonna go to graphic 39. They all want to write this slippery slope paragraph. The truth is that identity politics is the kryptonite that saps the joy out of all it touches. How long before Harrison Ford comes out as trans Solo? What price of a zero emissions Millennium Falcon will Jabba the Hutt be called out for fat shaming the obese? This is the exact same framing. I did a video a while back about the gay character in Beauty and the Beast. And they were like, wow, long before there's Pinocchio has sex with some gender fluid dwarves. They just want to write, and it's so easy and it's such a lazy argument, and they just want to get people to be like, all right, let me go vote no on Rotten Tomatoes.
We could do 2 hours on just the liberalism in Star Wars and how people are so wrong about the messaging and why they're upset about it. But I know that we are almost out of time.
Yeah, so look, the great irony here is Star Wars didn't do gender identity politics. They just had a black guy and a Latino and a woman in the movie, which is what the world is. There's black people, white people, Latinos, men and women, right? They're the ones doing gender identity politics, exactly to Matt's earlier point, which is, why aren't all the good people white men? Oh, you guys are doing gender identity politics. All right, we gotta go. I got great Rebel headquarters coming up next. Okay, thanks, Brad. Bye-bye. All right, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. We got more wonderful progressives for you guys. Always like lots of stories to cover, but I also want to get to the candidates. And today we covered on the Young Turks the story of the one vote and then the no vote election that made the difference in Virginia, where it's a tie right now. So everybody remember, voting matters, and primaries are more important than general elections. Don't let them trap you into the lesser of two evils, okay? And then there was a wonderful story in today's Young Turks about Michigan and how a woman there organically organized an effort to end gerrymandering in Michigan, and it's going to go to the voters in 2018. So if you're in Michigan, make sure that you vote to end gerrymandering. I love that effort. We'll try to get her on the program as well. But now we've got a great progressive candidate in studio that I want to talk to. So Samina Mustafa or
Mustafa.
I have a cousin named Mustafa.
Okay.
And I still can't say it right.
Okay.
All right, sorry.
Founder of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk.
I know, right? If you can't get that right as a Turk, what can you get right? Anyway, so you're running in Illinois' 5th district. It's massively Democratic. It's deep. That means Democrats have a 17-point advantage.
Yes.
But it already has a Democratic incumbent. This is when the establishment would tell you, well, we already have that vote. Why are you running? So who's the guy in office there?
So it's Mike Quigley. And the reason why I'm challenging him is because he's not a progressive. Because it's such a strong Democratic district, we should have a progressive there, not a moderate or a centrist. And certainly not someone like Mike Quigley, who's a corporate Democrat.
Why? What's wrong? How is he a corporate Democrat?
More than half of his money comes from corporate PACs and special interests. And
are you going to tell me that you're not taking any corporate PAC money?
I'm not taking any corporate PAC money as a Justice Democrat. I made that pledge.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so he takes his money from corporations. It's concerning. How about the actual policies, though? Is he progressive on the policies? Is he for Medicare for all?
No, he's not. And he's taken money from insurance company PACs and is pushing a public option. So to me, there's a direct line between his donors and his votes. He's taken money from financial services companies and voted against financial regulation. He has taken money from defense contractors and voted for increased military spending.
So in Washington and in the media, they'll tell you, no, that's the kind of Democrat that can win because they support the troops when they give all that money to defense contractors. But it's hard to make that case in a district that deeply blue. And so when you say, hey, we're not going to lose this race to the Republicans anyway, the real election's in the primary.
Absolutely.
What's their fallback excuse? Because their fallback excuses in purple areas is don't risk losing to a Republican. Here they don't have that excuse.
Right, no, absolutely. And the primary is key. It's coming up on March 20th, actually 3 months from today. So
wow, that's quick.
Yeah, it is quick. It's Texas and Illinois are the first two that are coming up. So this will be sort of the first opportunity for the Justice Democrats to prove that we can win. So it's coming up fast. So everyone has to pay attention to primaries. It's the key race in Illinois for a lot of races, and this one is critical. So the Democratic primary is coming up on March 20th, and in this district, people are actually surprised that they have a rep who takes money from defense contractors and has approved increased military spending. It really shocks them because they think of that as something that a Democrat wouldn't do.
I don't think they know the Democratic establishment well enough if they think that. So, all right, so that's the case against Dan Quigley.
Mike, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry, Mike Quigley.
Doesn't matter, we're not gonna have to worry about him after March 20th.
I like that way of thinking. Okay, so look, you had me on not taking corporate PAC money because that means you're uncorrupted. And you're progressive, he's not. But for the establishment, they'll say, well, how do we, their assumption is incumbents are awesome and challenges are not. So what's the case for your candidacy as to why you would be the better congressperson?
Absolutely. So I have been part of the community. I've lived in the district for over 30 years. I'm someone who's been in the business, nonprofit, and arts community. I've worked with nonprofits. I've worked at a Planned Parenthood on the west side of Chicago. I've actually worked on things that are affected by federal policy and funding. And so I'm intimately aware of the things, how votes affect real people. Quigley is a career politician. He got his start with a machine alderman on the north side of Chicago. So he's part of the political establishment. He doesn't have that experience. I've also gone to Washington to advocate for things like immigration and racial and religious profiling and hate crimes. And so I know the kind of advocacy that's required. I've talked to the nonprofits and advocacy groups that work on these issues. And for them, he is absent on a number of issues. Important things that affect voters, like Social Security, a living wage. These are the issues that people care about. So on economic issues, he is off the mark.
Are you for Medicare for all?
Yes.
Are you for $15 minimum wage?
Yes.
Money out of politics?
Yes.
College for all?
Yes.
All right, I'm sold. Okay, so first
Move
of all,
to the 5th district before March 20th.
Wouldn't it be amazing to have actual progressives represent you in deeply blue districts? Why do the Republicans get to pick insane right-wingers in their districts, but when we go to do it, they're like, no, don't risk progressives. There's no risk here. It's a 17-point advantage for Democrats, and with a Democratic wave coming. So let me show you the links here. Let's put up the links for Samina here. And look, I'm now on a warpath to get more volunteers, because the only thing more valuable than your money is your time. So if you're in the 5th district in Illinois, by all means go volunteer, knock on doors, phone bank for Samina, get a real progressive in your district. If you're not in that, if you are or are not in that district and you can't give the time, then at least give money. Make sure that you donate, because the non-corrupted small donor campaigns need the small donors. Otherwise, they won't have enough oxygen to win.
Yeah.
So by the way, so let's talk about that for a second. What do you do with the money? So the people donate to you, and what does it go to?
Yeah, so we need to send mailers to voters. That costs, an average mailer costs $50,000. So, but that's critical to the typical primary voter, which is an older voter. And they look to things like a piece of mail to say, what do you stand for? Who are you? Are you real? So there are certain things where you do need money. I have actually a huge base of volunteers that is helping me knock on doors and doing lots of field communications. I have an incredible team, but at the end of the day, there's some things that I still need to pay to get out to voters, and voter outreach is key.
Yeah, look, volunteers beat lobbyists because warriors beat mercenaries. So when mercenaries run into trouble, they think, I'm just gonna go to a different campaign, what difference does it make anyway? So, whereas if you actually believe and you're a progressive and you fight for it, you can make all the difference. I've seen it in race after race. So, and name recognition matters a lot. That's why you need the mailers. Because if everyone in that district knew Quigley and Samina, I think that given how democratic it is, they would almost certainly vote for you.
Absolutely.
The problem is that the incumbents have name recognition. Unlike me, people know it's Mike Quigley and not Dan Quigley. So they gotta get familiar with you, and hence the need to get the word out, etc. So one more thing, what made you get into this in the first place? How did you get in your head? You know what? I think I could take down this corporatist Democrat.
Well, because I've been in the community this long, I knew how progressive it was, and I thought, why do we have this centrist in this seat? And when I saw what was happening last year with the election, and I saw that the outcome was, I predicted that Hillary was going to lose, because I could tell there was a complete disconnect between Democrats and voters, and that was a failure of leadership. What we need is to rebuild the party and to have strong progressives where we can represent the progressive voters in that district. That's how we're going to make dramatic change. And all the big changes we've seen in history, the LBJs, the FDRs, that's what inspires people. And we need that. People want a New Deal.
So let me give you a question that is happening right now in the news. So we've got the budget that's coming up, whether it's going to get approved or not. The Republicans need Democratic votes. So Democratic leadership was saying, well, we can't have a government shutdown or be blamed for it. Some progressives were saying, well, no, we need the DREAM Act, we need net neutrality, we need to protect Social Security and Medicare. And if it means that we risk a government shutdown, if the Republicans won't support those incredibly popular provisions, then so be it. So what's your take on that? If you were already in Congress, which side would you be on?
We need to be on the side of justice. if we have to stand for something. We have to stand for the undocumented. We have to stand for net neutrality is about free speech and innovation. What do we stand for? If we're so worried that the GOP has a terrible reputation right now, why are we so concerned about what they think about us or how they're going to spin it? Why can't Democrats get out ahead of it and say, look, GOP is destroying our country. They're literally got a gun to America's head. Why are the Democrats handing them bullets?
Yes, and to be afraid of Trump at this point is unbelievable and unconscionable, right? To let him bully you. So if we've got a progressive caucus, and I don't mean the one that exists now, I mean uncorrupted Democrats who are a real strong progressives in Congress, then we can make a difference. In fact, you guys are already making a difference. If you don't know, today Pelosi began to change her tune and say, oh yeah, I meant to ask for the DREAM Act in the budget negotiations. Why? Because there was a lot of pressure, including by you guys. So go sign the petition, justicedemocrats.com/AmericansAgree, saying, well, these are the 3 things that you should fight for. They all poll above 60%, some as high as 80%. There's nothing to lose.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where why does it have to be by a poll? What do we stand for? Again, who are we fighting for? If we aren't fighting what the GOP has no shame. This tax bill is a total giveaway to their donors, and the middle class is getting raked over the coals. This is an opportunity for the Democrats to say we are on your side. This is their opportunity.
So hopefully you'll win on the 20th and in the general election, and you'll get to make that point inside the building.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Samina, thank you for joining us at Rebel
opportunity.
Headquarters. Really
Thanks so
appreciate
much.
it. All right, we got another great candidate for you guys right after this really quick break. Come right back. All right, back to Rebel headquarters here. And we're going to get to meet someone else in the Rebel Alliance in a second. First, a quick tweet. Kara Curley writes in, I wish there was change coming here in Wisconsin. Kara, don't you worry. Change is coming everywhere, okay? Change is coming to Illinois. It's coming to Wisconsin. And in this case, it's coming to Michigan because that's where our next guest is from. Now, I want to introduce you guys to David Benak. He is running in Michigan's 6th District, and his opponent is Fred Upton, who is an atrocious politician. We'll get to Upton in a second, but David, welcome to the Rebel headquarters.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So let's talk about you first. If you were in Congress, David, what are the couple of issues that you're most animated about and would fight for?
I think we have to start with universal health care. There really isn't much else that matters if we can't get to that. The other thing I think that needs to be at the top of the list is some real, true environmental protections. Yeah, I'm coming here from Michigan. I live in the state where we poisoned the water of one of our bigger cities and expected the people to pay extra bills for that. I live in the city which got the it's got the nation's largest Superfund site here, the Kalamazoo River. So if we can't clean up those things, we can't have good public health, whether it's environmental or healthcare, then we're in big trouble all around in every way.
Yeah. No, David, I'm going to ask you a random question here because it was just in the news today. So a group in Michigan decided they were going to try to get gerrymandering to end in Michigan. That they were going to, it's a ballot initiative to get the voters to vote to end the insane gerrymandering, and you can see where I'm coming at it from in the state of Michigan. What's your take on that issue?
So the group you're talking about is Voters Not Politicians. And they have been doing amazing work. I have never seen a petition drive that's as organized as this group has been. They collected about 425,000 signatures and turned them in. It's about 100,000 signatures than they actually needed. So they have absolutely crushed the organizing. Talk about grassroots effectiveness. I wish we could all do the kind of work that they did and get the same results. Now, we're lucky enough in Michigan that we have the ability to have a ballot initiative and get around the legislature completely. So in 2018, we're going to go to the polls and we're going to vote on it, and we're going to get fair redistricting for the first time in a long time.
But you've got a pretty good shot at beating Fred Upton. This district's only +4 for the Republicans, and in a wave year, it's exactly the kind of district that we'd pick up. So if you win the district and they say, okay, well, sad day for you, now we're going to redistrict you because that's a gerrymandered district, are you still in favor of it?
Absolutely. I mean, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, your vote has to count the same. If it works for you on one day and against you the next, well, then we shouldn't have had it to start with. This is a nonpartisan issue. A vote's got to be a vote's got to be a vote, no matter who casts it.
All right, great. And David, what made you want to run for Congress in the first place?
I'd long been active as an organizer for environmental and social justice issues, but never thought about getting involved in partisan politics. It didn't ever seem like the right choice for me. And that's when Sanders ran for president. And there's probably a lot of people in this movement who've been similarly inspired. For me, it was having worked for the Sanders movement, and then when he chose people to represent his people first reforms in the platform, I was one of 3 people from the state that he chose to go to the Democratic National Platform Committee. While I was there, I saw with my own eyes that everything that I feared was true. And the Democratic national leadership had created a system where the only people who can run are the people who have millions of dollars or who can easily dial up those millions of dollars. And it means the only people who can run for office, the only people who've got a shot, the only people who are taken seriously are the people who've got a direct line to the corporations. And I think 2018 is going to be the year when we see that the people want politicians who can't be bought. And that's what this is all about.
So, David, do you have an establishment Democrat against you in your race, in the primaries?
Got a couple of them. One of them is actually a corporate lobbyist who has given over $11,000 to the Republican incumbent.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about controlled opposition? It's almost a definition of controlled opposition. And I think that's what drives them crazy about the Just Democrats is that that they can't control you guys because you're not taking corporate PAC money, so they can't pull the strings. Before I get on to your opponent, Fred Upton, who is a loathsome guy, the super random question. Has anyone ever told you that you look like Matthew Broderick?
Yeah. After I grew the beard a few years ago, I started getting that.
I see it. Have you ever taken a day off in high school and made a movie about it?
No. I guess if the political thing doesn't work out, there's always that, right?
Yeah, okay. I can see Upton on the night he loses. He goes, Bueller? Bueller? Okay. Anyway, so let's talk about Upton. Back to serious stuff. So he's a Republican. I happen to know his record, but I'm sure a lot of people don't. What's so wrong with Fred Upton?
We could go a lot of ways. I'll just hit a couple of the highlights. He's over 60 votes recorded against the ACA, and he gained some fame around here and nicknamed Flip Flop Freddy lately because he told us he was going to vote against the AHCA. And of course, Trump calls him in the office because he needs Upton's vote. And the next day he comes out and he writes what becomes known as the Upton Amendment. And it's that silly pre-existing condition thing that would have given a pittance to people with it. And that's what actually got it passed. So this was his bill. And when it really comes down to it, it would never have gotten out of the House if he hadn't written that amendment. We'd have had about 500,000 people in Michigan lose their health care and over 40,000 people in the district. The way I look at it, you don't get to make a decision like that and still keep your job.
Okay, so you're for Medicare for all and he's for Trump care. That's a giant difference. What else?
Another big thing is environment. Now, I sent you some materials before, but just real quick, you can see with this guy a clear example of someone who's been bought. And he'd always voted poorly on environmental issues, but starting about 2009, he decided to start voting 0% in favor of environmental legislation. That just also happened to be the time that the oil and gas industry started funding his campaign at record levels and when he wanted to get the chair of the House Energy Committee. And now he votes, I think it's about 10% in favor of environmental legislation and still calls himself a moderate.
Yeah, when the press allows Republicans who vote 0% on the environment and who vote for Trump care and to destroy Obamacare to call themselves moderate, it drives me crazy. There's nothing moderate about those positions. All right, give me one more about Freddie Krueger Upton.
He's taken about $1.5 million from the telecom industry, and you can only guess how he voted on net neutrality.
Of course, he voted to kill it, right? And I want the audience to understand there's another incentive that guys like Fred Upton have to vote against net neutrality. Because if you destroy freedom on the internet, it makes it harder for people to rise up and challenge incumbents. So, right. David, in your case, I imagine that most of your volunteers and most of your fundraising comes from online, right?
Absolutely. And I have to say, this is one of the reasons I know we're going to win. Is because we have a volunteer team that just blows me away every single day. We've got over 100 people who are on our volunteer roster. We've done events this summer where we've had over 30 volunteers, and we're talking over a year from the election. And these people are excited, they're interested, they're motivated. It's what happened in Alabama. You know, we get these people excited because they see what's going on, they see this as a movement, and the only way we have to convey that message is with social media. So social media is the backbone of a progressive campaign.
So let's put up the graphic real quick of how to help David. So banakforcongress.com. All of these will be links in the description box below on YouTube and in the comment section of Facebook. So most important thing is to volunteer. Warriors beat mercenaries. Go be one of those warriors if you're in the 6th District of Michigan. And if you can't give your time, then give your money. Small donors need to band together to be able to beat the big donors. So David Banak, thank you so much for joining us at Rebel Headquarters. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're out of time. I've got the post game coming up next. And then we've got Old School coming up in about half an hour as well. Jimmy and I will settle the bet. So last minute votes here to find out whether Jimmy needs to pay me. That's tytnetwork.com/thebet. Go check that out. And of course, thank you for making all of these shows possible. And you do that through membership. And before the holidays, you've got this great chance to get membership and support these shows. $25 for 3 months of membership. tytnetwork.com/give. gift to participate in that. Thank you, and I'll see you in a minute in the postgame.